you are wondering what the true cost to install an Irrigreen system is, you've come to the right video. What's going on, everyone? Vince the Engineer here, and in this video we're going to detail everything we've spent money on to install this system. It goes beyond just the parts of the system itself. We're talking about the cost of pipe, the cost to rent a trencher, all of those details in a single video. And towards the end, I'm going to give you my review on this system. So stick around. But first, if you're new to the channel, welcome. We teach everything you need to know about lawn care. If you're into that sort of thing, please consider subscribing, ring the bell icon to be notified of new content, and make sure to drop a like. If you have any questions, one of our promises to you is that we answer every single one, even if it means reaching out to the manufacturers to have those questions answered. So please don't hesitate, drop those questions down below. So this is video number 4 of our Irrigreen playlist. I'll leave it linked down below in the description. You can go check out the other 3 videos we've done, which include planning, putting it in the ground, and setting everything up. All right, enough with the introductions. Let's dive right in. So I've got everything detailed out here. The value of the system itself, which are 9 heads and the controller, along with all of the cables. There's a cable that goes from head to head. It's daisy chained. That is valued at $4,697. So that's what you're paying for directly to Irrigreen. Now, you have to get this in the ground. You have to buy the piping, all the fittings. Are you going to rent a trencher? Are you going to trench by hand? I spent an additional, now this was given to me for free, but what I spent out of pocket to get the trenching and the piping and the fittings, I spent out of my own pocket, that was $2,358.88. I had an electrician put in an outlet, that was $200. I had a plumber put in a backflow preventer, that was $538.64. I purchased $574.72 worth of PVC pipe and fittings. And I rented a trencher, which was $445.52. Now, I did pay extra to have that trencher picked up and delivered. You could opt to do this by hand digging, which would certainly save you that much money, but we did about 300 feet of pipe, 300 feet of trench. That was a lot of trench, so the trencher was definitely the way to go. And then there were some extras, things that you buy just because you have an irrigation system and because I'm a DIYer. For instance, I did buy a larger capacity air compressor so that I could winterize this myself. You could certainly do it with one of the smaller pancake style compressors, but it would take a really long time. So I wanted something with a lot more volume, and I could blow these out in just a couple minutes. So one of those larger capacity air compressors, probably around $400 for something like that. In addition, to make the install faster, cutting the pipe, I'm a Milwaukee tool guy. I did drop another $200 on the PVC pipe cutting tool from Milwaukee, just to make the job easier. You could certainly use the ratcheting type, but the amount of cutting that we did, I just felt like that was gonna be very aggressive on my hands, and I just didn't want to deal with that, so I opted for the battery-powered cutter. Of course, if you are savvy with doing the electrical work and the plumbing work yourself, you could certainly save on those costs. The piping is what it is. I did pick that up from Home Depot, so you know, you're basically gonna be spending whatever the prices are at Home Depot or Lowe's, basically, if you're going to do this yourself. So I certainly did splurge and spent some money on things that I probably didn't need. So to break the numbers down that are probably more reflective of what you're going to do and what you're going to spend, I came up with a total of $1,548.88 for this setup. So that's the $200 for that electrical work for the outlet. That's the 500 and change for the plumbing work, which I just preferred to have a professional plumber install because, you know, I'm not brazing copper or anything like that. I just don't have the ability to do that stuff. So I did think that it was worth to spend that money to have a professional do that. And then there's the cost of the pipe. Like I said, it is what it is. And then the trencher I got in here for just a 1-day trencher, assuming that you can get it to and from your location. So that brings the grand total for the entire system here installed, doing it yourself, to $6,245.88. Now, if we want to put that into numbers that you could probably use to budget for your own installation, I've further broken it down based on the square footage of our area and the linear feet of the trench that we dug. So we have 13,000 square feet of area that we are watering. So when you take that number, it comes to like 48 cents per square foot, which sounds really cheap. If you're looking at that at a per 1,000 square foot basis, it is $480.45 per 1,000 square feet. Now, if you want to look at it in terms of how much trenching you're going to need to do, I came up with a number of $18.48 per foot. We did have 338 feet of trench. Previously, I said 300. That was just off the top of my head. But I did actually measure it. It's 338 feet. And that came out to that $18.48 per foot. So if you want to use those numbers for budgeting for your own system, go ahead. But be sure to check out Irrigreen's website. They have great tools online that'll help you determine basically how many heads you need and where to even place them. It's a great virtual tool, and it'll plan out the entire design for you. And then there's the time it took to install this. 9 heads with the controller. After I had the electrical work done and the plumbing work done by others, I was able to install this uninterrupted within 2 days. It was a weekend. It was a weekend project. I trenched on a Saturday, and then on Sunday, I put all the pipe in, I flushed out all the lines, I installed the heads, I ran all the cables, connected everything up, and then winter came. I had to blow everything out, and just as we came into spring here, I was actually able to spend a few hours setting everything up, calibrating the heads, things like that, which is actually the fun part, is playing around in the app, you know, getting your areas set up and scheduling. So really wasn't that hard to do. I would say it's probably medium on the hardness scale. Like you know, it's not really easy to do, but it's not very hard to do either. It's kind of in the middle of the road, so long as you have the basic skills to use some hand tools, and if you want to go after using the bigger equipment like the trencher and stuff like that, you know, you just have to be comfortable using that kind of stuff. But putting pipe together and things like that isn't very difficult. The instructions provided were pretty clear. I was able to follow them, but definitely takes a little bit of knowledge and understanding to do that kind of work. And it's something by design this system is meant for. It's meant for the DIY community to be able to install one of these systems on their own. Now, you might want to ask the question, is this going to be cheaper than installing a traditional irrigation system? And I could tell you that I had a quote for an irrigation system in the front yard, which is for only 3,000 square feet. It was a Hunter system with the MP rotators. They quoted me $2,700 installed for that system for 3,000 square feet. To do it in the backyard, I never did go to quote for that, but I can imagine it would have been another 3 or 4 times that amount. Now the difference there being you are having somebody else install everything and set it up, so you are, you know, you do have that convenience that you're paying for. But here you're saving on water, and especially with us with city water, it's a huge difference. With the MP rotators or a traditional irrigation system, you're overlapping water, you're watering way more than you are with something like this. And in most cases, you're probably going to be overwatering. So that's really the main selling point here. If you do it yourself and you install it yourself, I think you're going to find a true savings on the actual install, but then you're going to further get a return on your investment with the amount of water you're going to be saving with a system like this. So I think that's really the primary selling point of the Irrigreen system. Now I want to share with you some of my opinions about using this system here, positive and constructive. Let's get right into it. Starting with the positive feedback, this thing pretty much works as advertised. You set it up, you draw out the areas that you want it to water, and for the most part, it sticks to those areas. We do have city water in the mornings. There's less demand for water, so the pressures and flows are higher. And at times I feel like it does water a little bit beyond the areas that you have mapped out. But in the afternoons, once demand for water is higher, this is basically watering to precisely where I mapped everything out. So if you're going to be watering in the mornings, for example, when that demand is lower, you might need to consider for some of that stuff. Another thing I like about this is the app itself. It's nice to be able to control everything from your phone remotely. You don't have to be connected to Wi-Fi. It could be controlled over cellular. So if you're away, you could check on things and you can run it if you need to, or you can see if things have run, how many gallons of water have been used, things like that. A lot of data that's connected that you could see, something that I really like. And then of course, like I mentioned earlier, we're basically printing water precisely where you are mapping it out to. So you're not wasting anything. You're not overlapping areas. You're really saving water here, and that's the primary selling point of this system. But I do have some critical feedback, mostly having to do with the size of the stream and the size of the water droplets that come out of this system. You see, if you're using one of these systems to water a newly established lawn from seed, you're probably going to have washout. That's because the droplet size at the end of the spray here, it's pretty large. And that is by design. I know Irrigreen is very aware of this, and they are looking at ways to improve their system, starting with the insert here, which makes this fan of water. They can 3D print different inserts here, and maybe that's potentially a solution in the future to offer different spraying patterns with their system. You basically can unscrew the top here and pull that insert out, insert a new one. Very easy to do. Not sure if that's out yet, but it's definitely something that I have seen that they were considering. Another thing is when it's very windy, because you're spraying such a long stream, up to 35 feet in some cases, when you're spraying such a long stream of water, the wind can certainly have an impact on that. Even though the system may think it's throwing water 35 feet, if you've got a headwind on that, it's probably only spraying like 15 or maybe 20 feet. So when you think you're getting all that water to that area, in some cases on very windy days, it's not quite making it all the way to the edge. But I think that if you keep up with your watering schedule, eventually those areas will get watered. It's just that you may notice in some cases that the water is being basically bent by the wind, and will eventually water things like your car. Probably when you didn't want your car to get watered, or your driveway, you may notice water on the driveway because the wind is bending the water and basically throwing it into those areas that aren't mapped. And I'll also admit too that I have had a couple of timeout errors where you send a signal to start up one of these valves, it rotates for a little bit, and then nothing happens and you get a timeout error. That did happen to me with several heads. However, I was able to work through customer service to get those resolved. In one case, I had to dig up a head, make sure that the cables were connected correctly, things like that. They ran some background stuff on the back end, not exactly sure what they did, but things started to work in the end, and haven't had that issue since. But want to note here that the customer service is something that Irrigreen has been taken very seriously and has invested a lot of money in. So they know that when you're investing your time and money into putting one of these systems in, that they know you want their support in the background if things go wrong. So they are there for you. I've tested out their customer service. I've gone through a few tickets to address those timeout issues, and things seem to be working fine so far. And there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you for joining.